The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to 30 on Thursdays, a twice-a-month webinar series from us here at SescuTech. Today we're going to talk about 5 common uses for Nintex workflow. Just to do a little bit of housekeeping before we jump into today's presentation, for those of you joining us for the first time, the 30 on Thursday is a bi-weekly 30-minute webinar series that we put on that covers everything having to do with SharePoint and timely topics, add-ons, things like that. Our next webinar is scheduled for May 24th, how to articulate the value of an ECM project, and the presenter will be Dave Tobias. For the full schedule of all of our upcoming webinars as well as recordings of past webinars, go to sescutech.com/webinars. And again, we always want your feedback. So if you have any ideas for topics, any feedback, any sessions, any questions for any of our presenters, feel free to email webinars@sescutech.com. Today's session, 5 common uses for Nintex workflow, will be presented by Terry Simpson. He's a solution architect here at SescuTech. I'm Steve Witt, the VP of Product Development and Training at SescuTech, and I will be today's moderator. If you have any questions during the course of the presentation, please use the question or chat window in GoToWebinar, and we'll be sure to get those responded to during the course of our session. And if we don't get to them, we'll send a follow-up afterwards. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Terry. Terry, I'm going to go ahead and make you presenter.
All right, so we'll go through the agenda for what we want to cover today. So we're going to talk a little bit about Nintex, and we're specifically going to focus mainly on the workflow tool that they offer. So we'll pack in a few elements here within the next 30 minutes. So I'm going to demonstrate 5 different uses of the Nintex tool. We're going to start with vacation requests. We're going to go on to human resources and onboarding process when you hire employees. We'll talk a little bit about converting Word documents over into PDFs, expense reimbursement, and then we'll show a little bit of the forms tool as we get to the end of our session today. So let's kind of dive into this, and we'll show a little bit of an example here. So the first thing I want to do is show you really the end user experience first for the first element, and then we'll kind of dive into the back end of how we configured this and then show the other examples from here. So what we're looking at here is a page that we would use, for instance, for a vacation request system. So the page I'm looking at here shows the vacation list of all the items that I've requested over the last year. And then below that is the calendar of all the items that have been approved so that I can see what vacation I have consumed in the past or I have coming up in the future. So what we want to do is focus on the end user experience first. So the end user will come out and add a new item to the list, and they're going to go and fill out this form, which tells them, you know, who the vacation individual is, the type of vacation, whether it's sick leave, family leave, a floater day, and then the start date and end dates for that vacation. So for this example, let's say we're going to take a vacation starting on the 11th, and it's going to go until the 18th. And we're going to call this just basic paid time off is what we're going to call that. So I'll go ahead and hit the Save button. And the vacation has been submitted and the workflow has now been kicked off. Now the great thing that's going to happen here is that the end user really doesn't have to do anything else at this point. From here, the workflow is automatically going to take place and the boss is going to go out and approve the workflow from here. So we'll see we just got an instant message. And the instant message is stating that, hey, your annual vacation request was received. And this is the first part of the workflow, giving us that notification that we received it. All right, so I think we're getting a little bit of an echo here, so I'm going to pause for just a second and see if we can get rid of the echo. So hold on just a second. All right, so that didn't help. All right, we'll see if that works. All right, so we'll continue on here and see if the echo has stopped at this point. So this is the instant message that we just received for the vacation request, letting us know. Now we've chosen just to have the instant message, but it could be via the email or any other type of notification that you want to see. Now that we know that the workflow is started, the next thing we want to do is we want to go out and look at my boss's email to see the approval process from his perspective, because as an end user, all I needed to do was submit the vacation request. So I've opened up my boss's email, and we'll see right here that he just got an email stating that I've made the vacation request, and it's an annual leave is the type of request from the 11th, which is tomorrow, until the 18th. That totals 48 hours, and Human Resources is stating that they're entitled to 80 hours right here. So the boss has pretty much all the information that he needs in order to make a decision. Now, one of the things he can do is he can go ahead and click right here, and then he can open up the SharePoint site and approve the workflow from there. The other option is that he can also use what's called lazy approval and just come up in the email and hit reply, and then go ahead and type approved and hit send, and that will actually approve the item in the workflow and then add it to the calendar. Now the lazy approval can be set up to accept any terms that you would like to put in there, so that you can say approve, approved, okay, yes, no, no way, whatever terms that you want to use for processing that vacation request. You just type those in as recognized terms, and then the approver just simply types that in and goes from there. So it's great for that individual who may be out of the office or on their mobile device. They can immediately reply, and hopefully we've given them everything that they need in the email to answer the question that has been proposed as far as, can the individual take the vacation. So that's kind of the end user experience. We'll come back to the site and we'll see we just received another instant message saying that the vacation request has been approved, which is great. The other thing that I'll do right here is I want to go ahead and refresh this page, and we'll see down here on the calendar we should have the item on the calendar now showing that our vacation is going to go from Friday, tomorrow, until next week. And so the process is completed. So that's kind of the end user perspective, but what we want to do now is kind of go in and show you how we did this within Nintex. And we're going to spend a little bit more time on this first example, and then we'll move on to the other 4 examples that we have here for today. So the way that we did this is we went in and we went to the list, and we went into the workflow settings within that list. And within the workflow settings, we've chosen the Nintex option. Now, if you want to use the out-of-the-box workflows, you'll select this option. If you want SharePoint Designer, you can come in here. And then ultimately, if you wanted to build a workflow in Visual Studio, you can do that as well. But Nintex allows us to stay right here within the web application, and we're going to go in and look at the workflow that's here right now. So some of you may or may not be familiar with how the back end is when you create the workflow, and I want to take just a minute to show this to you. So the theory is that we're going to stay within the web application. You'll go out and map out the requirements for your workflow on a whiteboard or other piece of paper or Visio, whatever it is, and map down your requirements for what the process is going to be. And then you're going to come into the web application and actually build out the workflow. And so using the custom actions that are over here on the left-hand side, we can literally just drag and drop those right in here to the workflow and build it out. So the first one that we have created is called Send a Notification. so we can come in and look at see how that's configured. And all it does is sends an email to whoever the initiator is and says the subject is your leave request, and then the body is the type of leave request you have requested was received. And this right here is just a reference field, and you could choose any of the site columns that are available out there on the site. So if I come in and look at the item properties, we can look at all the site columns and metadata that's available, and you can reference those fields at any point. And the method for which we're going to send this can be done via email, instant message, or any other type of messaging capability. Now the two things we're going to do here next before we actually send this over to the manager is we want to get the leave balance. We're calling a web service here to get the balance of my vacation from a human resources system or something externally. And then we want to calculate how many business days are involved in that, because we don't want to take Saturday and Sunday out as far as my vacation is concerned. But ultimately, what we have here is what's called a Flexi Task. And the Flexi Task allows the manager to make a decision to either approve or reject the workflow. So let's take a minute and look at the configuration of this item. And we'll see here that the common manager is the individual who is assigned this task. So whoever in Active Directory is named as your manager is the one that's going to receive the email. And then this is the email that we saw a few minutes ago, that the initiator requested some type of leave, and it references that from the start date to the end date, and it captured the hours and then what Human Resources said they had as far as the balance is concerned. Now the outcomes in this particular workflow, there are only two, either approve or reject. But you can add other outcomes to this as well. So you could have another workflow or process that would send it to HR. Maybe you put it into a pending state. You could have other outcomes and come and add those at any point in the process. So we'll see down here in the workflow, if it's rejected, we're going to send an email notifying the individual it's been rejected. But if it's approved, we're going to go out and update the balance, then add the item to the calendar, which we saw that happen, and then ultimately we sent another instant message to the individual letting them know that their vacation request was approved. And you could use any of the tasks over here on the left-hand side to kind of build out this workflow even further if you want to. So that's a good example of the vacation request, which is the first process that I wanted to show you. The next one's a little bit more of a complicated workflow involving the onboarding process for hiring a new employee. So we're going to come over here to the new employee list, and what would happen in this scenario is a manager would go out and fill out a form to hire a new employee. And so the manager would come out and click on Add a New Item, and then fill out all the information for that new employee, first name, last name, their title, what their phone number is going to be. And you could also put other requests in here as well for assets that that individual is going to need on their first day. So I'm going to need a computer, a parking pass, whatever items that that individual is going to need, you can kind of select in the list right here. We're also capturing things like the department that they work in and who their manager is and even who the start date for that individual is. So what we want to do is kind of come in and look at this workflow and kind of show you how this can make the process internally a little bit more efficient. So let's look at the new employee onboarding. And Nintex does a lot to really help the onboarding process. One client that we're working with now, we're going to be going from, let's say, a 3-week onboarding process from the time they get hired down to probably a week or week and a half. So we can really reduce a lot of the time that it takes to go through that process. Now in this particular example, these steps are happening one at a time. So we'll go through the Creative Active Directory account process, then add them to Active Directory groups, then enable the email. And we're going to do these one at a time. But in theory, you could have processes that are going to run in parallel at the same time. So let's look down through here the workflow, and the first thing that's going to happen is for this individual, we're going to resolve a unique name and make sure that the username and email address are unique. And then the next thing that's going to happen is we're going to actually go out and create an Active Directory user. Now, one of the things you want to note is that the actions that are over here on the left-hand side, you get 134 of those out of the box with Nintex. And this is what we're really leveraging to create and build out the workflow that you see right here. Now, in the event that you do need to create a custom action, you can do that. So if there's something that you're trying to achieve and you can't do it with the 134 that are out of the box, you can always go out and create a custom one, save it, and then keep reusing it. The majority of the ones that we're looking at right here, though, are out of the box with Nintex. So it'll actually go out and create the Active Directory user. And the first thing it's going to do is check for any errors. And if there are any errors, it's going to go over and send it into an error handling process. So for instance, maybe for some reason we have 3 John Smiths on staff, and we just hired another one, and for some reason it went out and created a duplicate user. So the first thing that it's going to do in that error handling process is it's going to send an email to someone notifying them that an error occurred, and that they're going to have to modify the item that was entered. But the other thing it's going to do is it's going to decommission the Active Directory account that it just created, since that was the problem in the process. And so now someone knows that they need to go out and handle that kind of on a one-on-one basis. So that certain level of the workflow completes its process. Once that individual is then created, the next stop is going to be to come over and then add that individual into Active Directory groups. So we see right here that we're going to go out and get the department that the manager selected in the list item, and then there's a little switch right here that says if the individual works under sales, we want to create an Active Directory user group for that individual. If they work under the graphics department, then we need to add them to that Active Directory distribution group over there on that side. And these are those little things that tend to get missed when a new employee is hired. I remember getting hired myself, and you miss out on a meeting or a notification that went out, and it's all because you weren't added to that Active Directory group distribution list. And so these are those little things where you can make sure that the process is completed very consistently for each employee. And this also has an error handling process, which if it runs into any problems, it's going to send out a notification so that someone can go and kind of deal with that on a one-on-one basis. A couple of the other options over here on the right-hand side, we'll also see that we enable the email. We also update the user's profile. And then what I like over here on the right is when we get into the finish part, it actually pauses the workflow and stops it until the individual's start date comes around, which is nice. So once that individual starts, the first day of their employment, we want to go out and send them an email. And that email is going to state, welcome to the company, and may give them some instructions on what they need to do as far as the first day of their employment. The other nice thing is it's going to do is it's going to add an item to a calendar to schedule a review. So a lot of times organizations will have a 30-day or 60-day or 90-day review after your hire date. And so what this does is based upon your start date, it automatically adds that to the calendar. It could be a human resources calendar or even like a department calendar so that you know when that review should occur. Otherwise, someone has to remember to go ahead and schedule that time. And this is a nice way to have that automatically placed out there so no one has to remember to actually go and do that. So we've covered vacation requests, the onboarding process. The next thing that I want to cover here is converting a Word document into a PDF. So I'm going to jump over into another environment for this particular example. So I like to show this example because in a lot of situations you may have, let's say someone works in the communications department and they're going to create a press release. And usually the individual that's creating the press release can't just publish it out for everyone to see. It needs to be approved. So we could use Nintex to have an approval process. So you can imagine that individual going out and adding that document to a SharePoint document library. So let's go and add a document here to this Word document library that I've called it. So I'm going to go and find a Word document that I have on my desktop called 30 on Thursday document. We're going to upload the document into the document library. and let's give it the same title as what the name is. We could add some metadata in here if we wanted to as far as tagging it. And I'm going to go ahead and save this item. So the item's up into the document library, and this individual may go out and modify the document over and over and over again. Now, at some point, your supervisor or whoever's in the communications department needs to approve this. And what this workflow is going to do is it's actually going to take the Word document, convert it into a PDF, and place it into another document library. So once the individual's done, they can start the workflow, the individual can approve it, and then the press release would say be published out for everyone to see it. So in this scenario, we have the contract. It's in progress. So we're going to open that up, and the supervisor would come out, or in this situation, one of the two individuals that have been assigned to it can go out and approve it. So we're going to look at this particular workflow task, select the Approve button. We're going to go ahead and say OK. And at that point, the workflow takes off and is going to convert it over into a PDF. Now what I'm going to do is come back, and we're going to go to the other document library where the PDF should live, called Contracts PDFs. You see there are 0 items in it at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and open up this document library, and the item's not in there yet, but it's going to show up in just a second. The workflow has a timer job that runs in the background that takes a minute for it to pick it up, but it's going to convert it into the PDF and then place it into this particular document library. Now it's nice because in this scenario you can have the one document library that has security already set so that only internal folks can come out and modify that particular item. And then you can have the other document library where the PDF actually lives, and within that document library maybe anonymous users have access to it at that point. And so that way you're taking it from one environment to the other environment where they can see it. And we'll see right here at 153 the item was just published into that contracts PDF, and now we see that the item is a PDF instead of the Word document. So a very nice way of kind of moving it over into there using the workflow. So there's 2 other things I want to show you here for today. The next thing that I want to show you as far as expense reimbursement process. This is another great way to take an internal business need and then bring that into the SharePoint environment and automate it. So up here we have 2 lists. We have one list of the actual requests that are coming in. So I went out and purchased a widget which costs so much money, has a certain cost center, and I need someone to approve it. But the nice thing is that we have an approvers list set up down here at the bottom. And individuals can have certain approval amounts. So we'll see that even down here, he can only approve up to $750. You know, Mike can approve $1,000. Eden and Brent can approve $10,000 and $15,000, and then Brian pretty much an unlimited dollar amount that he can approve. So it's a great way to put some business processes into the environment and allow folks to go out and approve these items. So you can imagine going out, the end user just adds an item for the expense reimbursement. Once they add it, everything gets taken care of from there from the workflow perspective, and then folks get emailed, notified, and they can approve the item from there. So it's a great way to kind of, again, take some of those internal processes and then automate them. So we've got a couple more minutes. I'll go through and show you the Forms tool, and then we'll see if we can answer any questions from here since we've got about 5 minutes left. So the other thing that I want to show you here is that when you open an out-of-the-box form, we'll see that the form here is pretty vanilla. It just has the out-of-the-box look and feel. And what we want to do with the Forms tool is dress that up a little bit and be able to modify the way that looks. So I'm only going to select one button here, and I'm going to click on Nintex Forms. And by selecting that one button and clicking on it, we automatically are presented with another interface that's very similar to the workflow, and we see all the controls over here on the left-hand side. We have these controls that we can drag and drop onto the surface. So all the site columns and metadata that we see over here, we can drag and drop them right here onto the surface. The start date, end date, they're already right here. You could come in and even add text fields. So if you want to have like an introductory paragraph on the form or introductory sentence for each item, you can do that as well. But the nice thing is that the branding is already set up here. So you would have your logo, your color scheme, and your branding for your organization. So as soon as you select that form, it's here and ready to show off. You can even come in and target different devices. So I was looking at a desktop view just now, but now we see what an iPhone user would see. You could choose to add or remove fields from this. You can see what a BlackBerry user would see, a little bit wider screen, even an iPad as well. So it's nice to be able to target those end users based upon the Forms tool. The other nice thing is it's very tightly integrated with SharePoint so that we can go out and create these site columns right here on the fly. So that if I'm filling out the form and I decide I need another column, you can actually create a site column and adds it to the list directly. So we don't have to exit the tool, go out, create the site column, come back, modify the forms. It's just very tightly integrated right here. The other thing that we're going to do is we're going to publish this to Nintex Live, which puts it out there for everyone to see. So I'm going to publish it to Nintex Live, allow anonymous users to fill out this form, and we're going to save it. And then I'm going to publish the form so that we can see the end result here in just a second. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the Publish button. It's actually going to create a short URL that if anyone on this call wanted to type in this URL, they could actually submit a vacation request and see the form. So if you have a second and you want to, go ahead and copy down this short URL, and you can actually go and fill out the form and submit a vacation request viewing the form that I just created. So I'll give this just a second. So if you want to copy that down, you can. And then we'll go and look at the actual form here in just a second. So let's go ahead and copy that in case anybody wants it. We'll come back and browse to the Leave Request System. I'm going to add a new item to the list, and then we're going to be presented with the form itself right here. And we'll see this looks much different than the out-of-the-box form that we just looked at a minute ago. So this has the branding of your organization, the color schemes, and it really represents who you are for your end user. It makes for a great experience for those folks. All right, so we got about 2 minutes left. That's kind of what I wanted to cover. We kind of packed a lot into 30 minutes here, but hopefully you've got a good overview of what's going on, and we'll see if we have any questions from here.
Great, thanks, Terry. Hey, while you're on the leave request workflow, we did have a question about the approval process here and the steps that you went through to select the manager of the individual, of the initiator. Do you know if there's a way to get the question from the attendee is, do you know how to get the manager of the manager?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Actually, somebody just entered a vacation request. That's great. So you can go out and have some different logic for how you get these different items. So for instance, in this situation, all we're doing is selecting using the people picker what fields are available. Now, if the manager is available, then we could capture that item. So for instance, if you had an association management system or some other external database and you had forms-based authentication or claims-based authentication, you'd be able to go out and select individuals out of that. So in this situation, we're just going out and getting whoever the common manager is, just because that's a field that's very handy within Active Directory. Let's see here. And that's where we've selected it here. So that field needs to be available, meaning the manager's manager. So if that's available to capture within Active Directory or whatever database you're pulling it out of, then we could definitely do that.
Great. Another question. Can you add a workflow step to change the file extension for the Word document to PDF?
You can. What you have to do, let me minimize and come back to the other workflow here, is if we go back to the Word document library that we were looking at just a minute ago, I'll show you the configuration for this individual one first, if you want to change the file extension. So let's go out and look at this particular workflow. Go back just a step. All right, so here's the workflow settings. open up this individual workflow. And in the configuration here, you get to choose the destination and the extension that you want to change for creating that. So let's come down here, and here's the actual workflow convert to a Word document that you get out of the box. Kind of scrolling around the screen here. And here's where you select the extension. So we have the source, the current item, the field type, which in this situation we're selecting PDF, but you can change it to any of the other items that you see right here, XML, .dox, and then the output URL for where it's going to go is what site, the document library, the name, and then .pdf. So there's a lot of flexibility in what you want to do when you go to configure that. Hopefully I've answered that the way it was intended, what the question was. Go ahead, Steve.
Yep, and I think we have time for maybe one or two more. When using the workflow for AD account creation, can an account expiry date be set automatically, i.e. 1 week from the create date or something like that?
I don't think there's an out-of-the-box like task that's going to go out and do that. You know, you can have the tasks that you can literally just drag and drop over here to go out and create that Active Directory group or account. But the expiration of that, you may have to build a custom action to do that. So I may want to get a little bit more in the weeds with that particular one to be able to. But there's not an out-of-the-box one that necessarily does that. But you could build it into the workflow. So that it could expire, 30, 60 days and go in and then remove that individual if you wanted to. And you may even be a process where you want to set the hold date to pull in the action where you say pause for 30 days, and then after that pause is over, go decommission it. So that may be a way to do that as well.
Right. Okay, there are a couple other questions. Let's see if I can get to one more, and then we'll have to cut it off, Terry. When a vacation is approved, can the calendar entry be put into a person's Outlook calendar?
So that's a great question. You can do that. One of the custom actions that you have over here is integrating with other calendar items, even in Outlook as well. So we have provisioning, operations. I was trying to find that one over here. So we can create appointments in calendar items. So if you wanted to, this is the create a task in Outlook, and this is create an appointment in Outlook. So if you wanted to, you could have it go to their local Outlook account and create that invite or item right there.
Great. Well, I think that's all the time we have for today for questions. If there are any additional questions for Terry regarding Nintex, please send them in. Terry, if you want to throw your contact information back up there, and we'll be sure to respond as soon as possible. And if you have any questions for me, my contact information is up there as well. And we'll see you in a couple weeks. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Terry.
Thanks.